Alrighty, so for this video, we're going to go ahead and talk about the difference between a fraction and a rate. So a fraction is specifically talking about part of a whole, whereas a rate looks like a fraction, but it's not actually a fraction. It's comparing two units. It's comparing two different things on the top and the bottom. So something different on the top of the fraction than you have on the bottom of the fraction. And so what that would look like, so an example of a fraction, say you have half of a pizza. Okay, fractions only have one unit, or you have 3/4 of a mile. Okay, this is what a fraction is. It means you have part of something. You don't have a whole of something. Okay. Now a rate looks like a fraction, but it has two different units, whereas a fraction only has one unit. So an example of that would be, instead of saying you have half of a pizza, you would say I have one pizza per two people. Okay, do you see how you have two different words associated with this fraction? This is not 1/2. It looks like 1/2, but it's just comparing two different things, two different whole numbers. It's just in the form of a fraction, but it's not actually a fraction, because here I have one whole pizza and two whole people. Okay, I don't have half of a person or half of a pizza, whereas that's what this fraction right here means. It means I only have half of a pizza, that's it. Another example would be you can run 3 miles in 4 hours. Okay, instead of just saying you went 3/4 of a mile, it's saying you went 3 whole miles and it took you 4 hours. Okay, this is a rate. It is very important when you're writing a rate that you write down the units. Okay, if you are not writing down the units, then it's just a fraction. The different words is what makes it a rate, so you have to write those. Okay, so we're going to practice writing these in the form of a rate. Okay, so if I were to say 150 miles in 3 hours, how do we write that as a rate? You just put 150 miles over 3 hours. It's that easy. Okay, it's not a trick. Let's do this one. 240 text messages in 8 minutes. 240 texts in 8 minutes. You just put one on top, one on bottom. It doesn't even matter which one goes on top and bottom. Just write them in the form of a fraction. Typically, time will go on bottom, usually. Okay, so let's do this one. 45 songs in 3 hours. You would write 45 songs in 3 hours. Okay, so that's how we write a rate. I would want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to practice these two problems. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about how to solve a proportion. Okay, so this is what a proportion is. A proportion is two rates. It is two rates that are equal to each other. Okay, and how you solve it is you do the butterfly method. You might remember this. Butterfly method is how we solve a proportion. And a proportion is made up of two different rates. But what is important to remember is that the units on top are the same and that the units on bottom are the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a problem so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this one right here. Here is your steps for solving proportions right here. So what we're going to go ahead and do is step 1, we need to identify what is missing. Okay, and we need to create two rates. Okay, so we have one rate and a second rate. We have two different rates. It says Lena bought 2 pairs of sneakers for $90. At the same store, how much would 5 pairs be? Okay, so we have 2 pairs of sneakers, $90. The question is how much money, and 5 pairs. So when we're creating our rates, let's go ahead and practice creating this rate just like how we did up here. Just like how we did right here. You're going to do it that same way with this first part. We have 2 pairs of sneakers for $90. There is our first rate. So we have 2 pairs and $90. Okay? Again, make sure you write the units. Otherwise, it's not a rate. Okay? Now, what would my other rate be? It says how much, so this is a question mark, how much money, okay, we don't know how much money, and then it says we have 5 pairs, okay? Remember what I was saying, how your units on the top need to be the same? Since I put pairs right here, I have to put 5 pairs of shoes on top on this side. So that way, both of the tops have the same unit. They're both talking about pairs of shoes. Now, what would I put on the bottom? Well, I don't know how much money, so I can't say, but remember, what we put in the place of something that we don't know is a variable. So I would put an X here, or an M, or a P, or an S, or a D, whatever you want it to be. This needs to be a letter, because letters stand for something we do not know in math. Okay, and that is how we would set up our proportion. We have X dollars, because I don't know how much money, and notice I have money on the bottom over here, so I have money on the bottom over here. Those units on the top are the same, and the units on the bottom are the same, okay? Now how we go ahead and solve this is we do butterfly method. Okay, so we're going to take this, and what you do is we multiply the 2 numbers that are across from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply these 2 numbers because they're the ones across from each other, and then we divide by the one left over. That's how we solve the butterfly method. So in your calculator, you would go ahead and type $90 times 5 pairs of shoes, and then we would divide it by 2 pairs of shoes, which would give us a total of 225. So that means X right here is $225. It is important that you include units in your answer so we know what that 225 represents. Okay, let's practice setting up and solving another one. Let's do this one right here. So it says, remember, we want to create our 2 rates. We need 2 different rates. So the first one, we have Leo earned 1200 XP in 3 hours of playing his favorite game. If he keeps up the same pace, how much XP will he earn in 5 hours? So our first rate, we got 1200 XP in 3 hours. That is our first rate. So let's go ahead and write that. We have 1200 XP, and then we have 3 hours. Okay, there's our first rate. Now we need to create a rate on the other side, but I have to have the same units on top, and I have to have the same units on bottom. So you can already go ahead and write on the top, on the other side, XP and hours. We just need to put in the numbers. Okay, keep reading. If he keeps at the same pace, how much XP? So I don't know how much XP. This is my question mark. That's my missing piece. Will he earn in 5 hours? And there is our second rate. So we have a question mark and we have 5 hours. Since the question mark is on the XP, we would go ahead and write our variable here. I'm going to go ahead and change this letter so I don't have 2 X's. We're going to go ahead and do A. Again, variable can be any letter. And then I'm going to go ahead and put 5 hours right here on the bottom, okay? Because I have hours on bottom over here, so I need hours on bottom over here. So we have 5 hours. And then how we solve it is we go ahead and do cross multiplying. We do that butterfly method. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply the two things that are across from each other. So we have 1,200 multiplied by 5, which gives us 6,000. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide it by the one left over. So we're going to go ahead and divide 6,000 by 3, which gives us 2,000. So that means, remember, whenever we're writing our answer, we want to include the units of the thing that we were solving. So that means A stands for 2,000 XP. So in 5 hours, Leah will earn 2,000 XP. Okay? Now, how would we solve it if it was comparing two different things? Sorry. So what this would look like is we have two different stores, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, let me get rid of this other problem right here so we have more room. We have two different stores here. We got store 1 and we got store 2. We're going to still do it the exact same way, okay? The only difference is we're setting up two different proportions, okay? I got the proportion for store A, and I got the proportion for store B, okay? We need two different proportions because we're comparing two different things, okay? So my rate for store A is, let's go ahead and read it. So it says deal A, or store A, has 3 bags of chips for $4.50. Store B has 5 bags of chips for $7.25. How much does one bag cost in each deal? Which deal is cheaper per bag? Okay. So what this is going to look like is we're going to go ahead and set up store A first with the question. Okay. So we have store A's first rate is 3 bags of chips for $4.50. Okay, remember your units on top and bottom need to stay the same. So on this side, we're also going to have bags of chips and money. And now we use, for the other side, we want to use the question, not the other rate. We don't want to use this. We want to use the question. So it says, how much money does one bag cost? So we're talking about one bag, and it's asking how much money, okay? So that's where my variable would be. We have an X on our money. Now let's go ahead and set up store B, okay? For store B, we're gonna go ahead and not use store A at all. We're going to use this and the question, okay? So we wanna use its rate and the question to make our proportion, okay? So our first rate for store B is 5 bags of chips for $7.25. So we got 5 bags of chips for $7.25. Okay? And it's going to equal the other side. Remember, our units need to stay the same on top and bottom. So we are going to have how much for one bag. Okay, so we have one bag, and the question is, how much money? Now we would go ahead and solve both of these. We're trying to figure out which store gives me the cheaper bag of chips. This is a very real-life context problem. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, let's solve store A first. We have 450 multiplied by 1, which would be 450, and we divide that by 3. So we have 450 divided by 3, which gives us 1 5/10. And if we go ahead, remember that money always has 2 decimals. Okay, so my answer for store A is it's $1.50 for one bag of chips. So it's $1.50 for one bag of chips. Now let's go ahead and do store B. Go ahead, cross multiply these two together, divide by the one left over. So if we do 7.25 multiplied by 1, we still get 7 and 25 cents. We divide that by 5, and we get, hold on, $1.45. Okay, so which store is cheaper for one bag of chips? The answer is store B. Store B is cheaper, which is the final question of this problem. Which deal is cheaper? The answer is store B, because they're only $1.45, whereas store A is $1.50. Okay, so remember, when you're comparing two different stores or two different things or two different people, that you have their rate and the question. Don't put both of the rates equal to each other. It will not work. Okay? And then for the other proportion, you set up the other one with the other question. Okay? So let's go ahead and set up one more and see what that would look like. Oh. Okay, here we go. Let's do this t-shirt one right here. So we have, sorry, it says printer A makes 18 shirts in 3 hours. Printer B makes 32 shirts in 5 hours. How much does each print per hour? Okay, this is the other thing that I wanted to talk about, is when you see this word, the words per, each, or every, or the word for, okay? For is not as common, it's mostly these, but you will see for occasionally. It means that there is a 1 there. So when it's saying, how many shirts, this is my question, X shirts, okay? Does each printer print per hour? It's talking about 1 hour, because it's got the word per right there. Okay, so the words per, each, and every, and the word for mean 1. Okay, that is a special type of rate called a unit rate. So a unit rate is where you have one of the units has a 1. So this would be like saying 60 miles per hour. Have you heard that before? 60 mph, 60 miles per hour. It's talking about 1 hour. Okay, this right here is a special rate called a unit rate. So a unit rate is just a normal rate, but one of the numbers is a 1. That is a unit rate. Okay? And so what it wants us to do is it wants us to find the unit rate, because it wants us to find something with 1. This is what it also did on the last one. You see how this rate right here, it says $1.50. It's $1 for one bag. This right here is a unit rate because it has a 1 as one of the numbers in its rate. Okay? So let's go ahead and set up this t-shirt problem. So again, we're going to go ahead and start with the first t-shirt and use the question. Okay, we're going to completely ignore printer B for right now. Completely ignore it. Okay, so let's write, we got printer A, and it's making 18 shirts in 3 hours. Okay, and the other side of my proportion is going to be the question. Remember, we need to have same units on top and same units on bottom. So that means I need to write shirts and hours over here. And it wants me to find the unit rate, which means one of these is 1. And I can tell because of the word per. and then it says X shirts. I don't know how many shirts. Okay, now let's set up printer B. So for printer B, I want to use the question, and I want to completely ignore printer A and just look at printer B's stats. So for printer B, we have 32 shirts in 5 hours equals, and then remember the second rate is the question, X shirts and 1 hour. Make sure you're keeping those units on top the same and the units on bottom the same. If you switch it, it's bad. So if you were to say 32 shirts and 5 hours, and then the other side you put 1 hour and X shirts, this is bad. This will give you the wrong answer because your units on top do not match, okay? They have to match. If we look at it, your units are opposite of each other. This is bad and will not give you the right answer, okay? Make sure you're setting up your proportion correctly. Now let's go ahead and solve my two proportions. Okay, so we have 18 multiplied by 1, then we're going to divide that by 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. So we have X equals 6. What does this mean in terms of this problem? X stands for shirts, so it means that in 1 hour, printer A makes 6 shirts per hour. Okay, now let's look at printer B. Okay, let's look at printer B. So we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. 32 multiplied by 1, then we divide it by 5. So we have 32 divided by 5, which equals about 6 4/10, okay, of shirts per hour. So which one makes more shirts per hour? The answer is printer B. Printer B makes more shirts per hour because 6.4 is higher than 6. So printer B is the better printer. And that's how you solve proportions.